Hello all, welcome back to the Heated Bench, episode 3. I'm joined by Alex again, and I've got a new guest this week, Adam, aka the Gerbil. Hiya, Adam. Adam's been one of the characters that I have been wanting to get in here. Quite an argumentative guy, bit of a love-hate relationship, so it's probably going to be a little bit spicier this week. Do you want to introduce yourself, Adam, and give us a little fact about yourself?
The facts, Dev. I wasn't expecting that. Hello, I'm Adam. Nice to be here. Nice to be here with you, Alex. Terrible hair, but nice to be here with you nonetheless. Devon, same to you, but unfortunately, I can't see your hair. Or maybe it's fortunate actually. I can't see your hair, but it is.
Well, it's been cut today, but it is a little
It is.
short.
Yeah, it's dreadful that, Dev. But yeah, I like football. I like American football. I like cricket. Do you want me to list everything, Dev? Is that
No,
what I
not
must do?
everything, mate. You can
Right,
you
okay.
can leave it at that.
Right, thanks.
No, you are a big American football guy, along with myself. So I look forward to getting into that in a few weeks with you. When the playoffs
Yeah,
come around, we can
yeah,
start
yeah.
getting
I
into
think
that a bit more.
I think Alex knows quite a lot about American football as well,
A
don't you, mate?
big Eagles fan, aren't we, Alex?
Never underestimate my sporting IQ, mate, in pretty much anything. So I'll be providing some facts along the way. Don't you worry.
I'm
I do
excited for
doubt
it.
your sporting IQ on everything.
So lads, we're going to cover a few things this week. Football. Obviously, we'll cover the Premier League again this week. A couple of managers in some sticky situations. It's going to be a race to see, I think, who's going to be sacked first. There was a couple of meltdowns this weekend, particularly Paqueta against Liverpool, both on the pitch and on Twitter afterwards. Caicedo getting sent off against Arsenal, and Arsenal putting another boring performance in a derby game, which I mentioned last week, worst team to watch in the Premier League. But the big change in the Premier League this week is 2 new rules have been introduced. Both rules based around squad costs and TV revenue. The squad cost seems to be pretty good for the bigger teams. A couple of the smaller teams with smaller grounds were against the rule. And then the TV payment rule, a couple of the big teams were in favour of.
You know how those rules get voted? So these are new financial fair play rules, and they've both been introduced because they've been voted for by the teams. There's a certain number of teams that have to be in favour, right?
Yeah, so the minimum number is 16, I believe. 16 in favour of.
I think it's 14.
Was it 14? Is it? Sorry, that's my bad. Yeah. Just have a quick. Yeah, it is actually, Alex. Yeah, it's 14.
That makes sense. 2/3, isn't it?
Yeah, there was 6 teams against in the squad costs rule.
Who are they?
The teams were Bournemouth, Brentford, Brighton, Palace, Fulham, and Leeds. So a few of the
Really?
newer teams. Yeah, I think the problem with that is a lot of them have smaller grounds, meaning that with that, like if they spend quite a bit on transfers, they don't really get the revenue in from match days to be
Yeah.
able to balance the books.
Do you know what? I was surprised at first, but actually that makes sense. It's going to be the smaller teams that are going to be against these rules, isn't it?
Yeah. It has been brought in that rule, though, that the bigger clubs can't really balance the books themselves. Chelsea, Villa, and Everton have all been, they've all done this in the past. Effectively, Chelsea balanced their books last season by selling a couple of hotels to a sister company. Everton and Villa both sold their women's team back to their parent club to balance the book. So that's
I think Chelsea did the same with their women's team as well.
Chelsea did it with their women's team as well.
So
yeah,
I think they sold the training, the rights to the women, the naming rights of the women's training ground off or something like that.
Right. Okay.
No,
So
that's fine
essentially,
though. That's fine. You can sell the sponsorship rights to
I
a
might have
training
got that
ground.
wrong. They did something sus with the women's team as well.
Well, I think what Jeff said is a lot of them have just been selling the women's team to another entity, which that is dodgy, right? And it is. But the thing that gets me is why do they have to do that? The reason that I think they have to do that is because they aren't being allowed to spend the money that they have on the players or the infrastructure or whatever else that they want to spend it on, right? That's the problem, isn't it? The Premier League
well,
says we don't want you spending this money.
well, that is sort of the case, but I think it's more a case of balancing the books for everybody. Whilst I understand that those bigger clubs earn more, make more, get more from sponsorship, obviously have the book to sign the bigger players, it's giving those teams that are coming up or don't really have the infrastructure to be able to compete. I mean, the Premier League's probably the most competitive it's been for a while in terms of what teams are in the top half of the...
Does that not do the opposite? I'm thinking based on those 6 teams that you said opposed it, this is going to be a rule that favours the rich teams, which, from my experience, is every financial fair play rule that's ever been. In my opinion, all these rules that they bring in, UEFA, Premier League, whoever else, they are designed to keep the status quo, and they are to the disadvantage of smaller teams who they might have the money because some rich geezer from the Middle East has bought them or whatever else, but they're not allowed to spend the money. And then they're not allowed to spend the money, and there's all these reasons why I'm not allowed to spend the money. They hide behind the fact that, if the sugar daddy leaves and the club goes bust, then it's a little community that's been ruined, which is a lot of shit because realistically...
Why is that a load of shit?
Because realistically, they're not going to do that, first and foremost.
Well, that's not true.
It's possible, but they're not going to do it, right?
Bury went bust.
Who did?
Bury went bust before FFP.
Okay, who bought Bury from the Middle East? That's news to me.
And
What Sheikh bought Bury?
Well, you can't apply one rule to one and one rule to the other, can you?
No, but
you can't legislate and say, oh, if you're taken over by ex-Middle East or ex-American business owner, then you're free to do what you want. Do you know what I mean? That's what you're saying.
Let's rewind here. We're talking about Premier League clubs, right? I'm not talking about Stags. So the point is that the Premier League clubs are kind of way above that. They're way above the teams like Bury or whoever else has gone bust in the past. I'm sure you could tell me. But the point is,
but those teams have a chance to get into the Premier League, right? Like Luton and other teams, and Bournemouth and Brentford and Brighton, who were in the Football League years ago.
Right, okay.
So they'd be coming up with the same owners.
I do, but I guess when these owners come into teams in this stage, they're looking for a pipe dream. Really, it's like the Wrexham story.
Yeah, of course they are.
The Birmingham story.
And the Watford chairman's admitted that they buy teams in the lower leagues to get into the Premier League. It's the gold mine. But FFP there is to protect those lower clubs.
No, it ain't. It absolutely isn't.
Well, look at Everton. No. Look at Everton, Adam. They were spending 95, 96, 97% of their wages, of their revenue on wages. And financial fair play to step in, dock points, and get their books balanced. Because if not, they'd have gone bust. Easy.
Mate, you reckon Everton were about to go bust before the saviours of the Premier League waltzed in and said, I'm taking 10 points off you. That'll show you. No, mate, that's not right. Realistically, Alex, teams in the Premier League, right? If you want to stop them from going bust by, having inflated wages and then a sudden exit of the money, then that's fine, right? But you can just make it mandatory, and they do this in La Liga, right? There's things in La Liga that have to be in every player contract. One of them being a buyout clause. Dev knows that because he played Football Manager. All right.
Yeah, but the buyout, they're a farce. The buyout clause on some of their players are like $1 billion. They're never being met.
Exactly. That's not my point. The point is, if it's possible for a league to dictate what you can and can't put in a player contract, then you can do that in the Premier League, where you say you have to have contractually in this contract, if you are to get relegated, then you have to reduce the wages. That's the problem here, right?
They do that anyway.
We're saying no, but they do that, yes, but there are cases where they don't do that. I think there was a Sunderland example. I heard Paul talking about it like a year ago or whatever. My point is, if there's mandatory, you have to do that when a club gets relegated, then worst case scenario, team in the Premier League, guy from wherever comes in, spends a load of money, team gets relegated, he buggers off. As soon as they get relegated, wages have to get reduced by 50% or whatever, right? That's then the buffer to save them. And from my experience of like watching football, this sort of thing doesn't happen all that much where a team gets relegated and all of a sudden it's a disaster. Like if Everton were to get relegated last season, when, as you've pointed out, they were in dire financial straits apparently. If they'd have got relegated, are you telling me they'd have gone bust? No, of course they wouldn't.
Well, Luton have gone back-to-back relegations, so...
Yeah, but I know this is a bit daft, but
I'm not sure about that.
Luton massively overachieved, didn't they? Like, the year Luton went up, nobody expected them to go up. In fact, I think they were one of the favourites to go down. The parachute payment is massive for clubs when they go back down. I think that's sort of what helps keep that fever dream alive. Look at Sheffield United. How many times have they bounced up and down? Norwich is another team that have done it. So this parachute payment that's in now obviously gives these clubs a way back and stops that instant.
Exactly. You're absolutely right, then. There is things in place to mitigate the chance of a team going bust if they get relegated from the Premier League and they lose all the TV money. That is absolutely right. And that's, backs up my argument to say that financial fair play rules aren't being introduced to save teams from going bust. They're being introduced to keep teams like Man United, Liverpool, and the ilk right at the top, and it makes it harder for Bournemouth, Brentford, Brighton, Palace, Leeds that you listed. Makes it harder for them to progress through the Premier League because they're not able to compete financially.
Let's talk.
But over time, they will get to that point, right? If they sustain success, and
how do you sustain success? It's a flash in the pan for a team like Sunderland that they're going to finish maybe in the top half this year, right? Next year they won't. They're not going to be able to sustain that, right? But the point is, if they were able to invest more and more and more and compete financially with the teams that are at the top, then what do you want?
Why can't they do that? Right? Well, why can't they do that?
You just told me that Everton have spent 98% of their revenue on players, and it's like you're pulling your hair out.
And Sunderland haven't done that. Sunderland haven't done that.
Yes, and my point is, it's a flash in the pan this season. Realistically, they're never going to be able to compete long term with the teams at the top of the league. At the end of the day, right, it depends what you want. If you want a league that is like won and lost based on performances and, anything to do with sport, including the manager and the decisions that the manager and the players make and the way that they prepare. But if that's what you want, which I think most people that, are purists in sport, that's what they do want. But the way that the Premier League is, you know for a fact that there's only 3-4 teams any given year that can win the league. That, if you were to design the Premier League from the start and say, right, I've got an idea, it's going to be a game called football, and we're going to have 20 teams in the league, but only 3 of them can ever win it. You'd go, what a stupid idea that is. Because it is.
But that's the same for every top league in Europe. That's just is what it is.
Doesn't mean it's right.
Yeah, I kind of have to agree with that. Like you say, again, it looks another rule that's just going to favour those big clubs. my question to you
then
is...
how does that work in other leagues then? When other leagues don't apply that rule, like in Germany, they have a 50+1 rule, so they have different financial fair play rules to us. So, it's Bayern, Dortmund, and Leverkusen there every year. It's AC Milan, Juventus, Inter up there every year. It's Paris Saint-Germain up there every year. So, it's Celtic and Rangers every year. So it applies to every league. It's not just the Premier League.
Yeah, mate. Let's work our way through one league at a time. Let's fix them all, mate.
No, to be fair though, like,
and I'm in cuckoo land apparently.
I mean, we could be here all night. Obviously, we mentioned that this is a big thing for teams like Bournemouth and Fulham that have probably the smallest grounds in the league, and that's where obviously a lot of the revenue comes away from, like sponsorship and stuff. Is it just a case then that they have to buy smarter and hope that they can find hidden gems rather than just being able to buy proven talent and just fingers crossed that they're going to stay in the league? Is that what the Premier League is looking at?
That's exactly what the Premier League is.
That's how Brighton and Bournemouth pretty much operate on their model, don't they?
Well, it is, but it, like you say, how sustainable can that be? You can only get that right so many times. Look at Forest this season. Forest realistically went out and spent a fortune last season, brought a load of players, and then this season, those same players, the mould looks like it's not working as such. They've gone through 2 or 3 managers already, and it's clearly not sustainable. So how do those smaller teams get to compete with the bigger teams?
Well, Bournemouth have sustained it, and so have Brighton, and Brentford have sustained it for
Here we go.
Go on. No, I'm just saying the teams have sustained it. I'm not saying they're going to break the mold of the Big Six or win the Premier League, but like there have been teams that have come up and used that model where they've bought and sold players and sustained and played decent football in the Premier League and like got into Europe. Like Brighton have got into Europe.
Yeah, but Wolves were in Europe a few years ago. And they're going to go down and more than likely going to break the record of having the least amount of points. So again, it's not sustainable, is it? It's not. There's only so many times you can do something like that before it backfires.
Teams have sustained it, right?
Yeah, they have, but
some haven't. But like Leicester sustained it and won the Premier League and won trophies for a period of time.
Yeah, but Leicester winning the Premier League was a flash in the pan. It'll never happen again. But then they like still got into Champions League and still got into the Europa League and then won the FA Cup like 5-6 years later. So like they were still competitive. They sustained success to them.
That's the point, right? That I've literally just written that down. You are saying these teams have sustained success, right? What success? Have they won the Premier League? Have they come close to winning the Premier League? Have they won anything?
Oh, right.
Success. No, mate, you're patronising these teams, Alex. You're a Man United fan. You're patronising these teams. Yes, you are. Yes, you are. Let me tell you why. You're patronising these teams because you're talking about success, but you're not talking about success in your Man United language, which is Premier Leagues, Champions Leagues, FA Cups. You're talking about success in their language, which is patronising, for Brighton and Brentford because they've come 7th 3 times in a row or something down.
That is success. Well, what is success to Brighton? What is success?
We're in the Premier League. They're in the league. So they obviously have a chance to win the league because they're in it. So success is winning the league.
Do you think, honestly, hand on heart, if you ask Brighton's chairman and manager what success looks like for them, they would reply, winning the Premier League?
No, but that's not my point. My point is,
so what?
If you have a different structure of financial rules that don't benefit the big teams and negatively affect the smaller teams, then there becomes a world where over time, it's not straight away, because as you rightly pointed out, if you make mass changes in the Premier League, then there'll be a flux of players that go to the continent, and that's fair enough. But the point is, if this is a thought experiment, Alex, right? I'm not saying that this is going to happen like this, and I've got a list of things to do to change, and it's going to happen overnight. But it's just the idea, like, genuinely think about it. Like I said 20 minutes ago, imagine you're thinking of a league, right? You're thinking of a sport, you come up with football, think of a league, and then you design a league where only 3 teams can win it. That's just wrong.
I think the problem.
That's the nature of sport everywhere. Everywhere.
That doesn't mean it's right, and it isn't.
I think a big problem in especially the Premier League now as well is that because we are seen as the biggest league in the world, and those big teams have such a market now, not just in England, but in America, in Japan, around Asia, like they are obviously doing all the tours and everything to bring that revenue in. I don't think, like Adam says, the Premier League are ever going to want them away from being a big club. I think it's like probably damaging the Premier League that United have struggled so much in the last few years. Having Manchester United in the Champions League brings way more eyes and money to the Premier League than it does with them finishing 15. Now, as a Liverpool fan and someone that enjoys watching teams like United suffer every week, it's fantastic. But like I say, when these teams go into Europe and you've got teams, no disrespect to them, like Newcastle, like Villa, competing in Europe, they're not competing. All right, I take it back a little bit because Newcastle did compete. Newcastle were pretty unlucky.
So did Villa.
Were pretty unlucky a few years ago against PSG. They were essentially robbed of going through those groups by a referee decision.
It was Villa last year. They nearly knocked PSG out.
Well, I think the story we could take from this is PSG just can't play against English clubs. But no,
look,
like
you said there about United finishing 15th, it's bad for the Premier League and the Premier League thinking it. Yes, but also, like, isn't then that the beauty of the Premier League? That Man United can finish 15th and Villa can get into the Champions League and so can Newcastle and compete.
But they can't. Yeah,
and Brighton can get into Europe and so can Bournemouth. And then they can sell players and then do it the following year and sustain it. And Forest 2 years ago win the playoff final. So they didn't even win the playoff final, and they're in Europa League now. So I'm not saying teams are going to come in and break the mold of the Big Six or win the Premier League, but like, if you ask their fans if they've had success, they will say
Look at those recent teams that have made it, though. If you look at it, Wolves now look like they're going to go back down. West Ham are in dire straits. They won the Conference League. Forest didn't look great. All right, they've found a little bit of stability now. But for every example you've given in Newcastle, in Villa, in Forest, you can switch flip the switch and look at those three teams and think the exact opposite has happened there. So there are examples for both sides of it.
So do you think they're getting relegated because of FFP? Do you think like the Premier League have held them back and as a result they're going to get relegated? Or do you think Wolves are just fucking shit? I looked at their team the other day and I did not recognise a name on their 11.
But that's the problem. Because of those rules, they can't sustain, like they can't buy the players that they need to sustain because of the rules that are in place.
I imagine they sold a couple of big players, right? They sold Cunha to Man United, so they did sell at least one big player. But
they sold a lot of big players, and a lot went to Saudi for big fees as well.
Yeah.
So it's not like they didn't have money.
So why do you think they sold those players? They're in the Premier League. They've, as you've rightly pointed out, they had a period of time where they were quite successful in the Premier League for Wolves standards. Let's put that in there. Why did they then have to sell the players?
Getting into the Europa League is overachieving for Wolves.
For Wolves, yeah. Sure.
Well, what do you expect them to win the Premier League?
I would like a world where they could win the Premier League, yeah.
Well,
but that's by the by. My point is, why are they selling their best players? Like, why did they do that? I don't know.
Well, if they're getting 80 million offers from Cunha and then 50 million offers in Saudi for Ruben Neves, then they're going to accept those kind of fees, aren't they? So.
But it doesn't show much ambition for your own club. You're just being a feeder club there, then, aren't you? You're not going into a league with any ambition that you're going to push again for Europe or even push to win the league, like Adam's saying.
But if those players want to leave, they want to leave. So,
well, I've got a follow-up question. That was part A. Part B: why have Wolves not reinvested that money into the playing squad? They're in the Premier League. They obviously have had. They've done all right so far in the Premier League. Why have they just banked that money? Like, do you know why?
Well, do I don't know what kind of signings have Wolves made. I don't know what money they've chucked about. I know Burnley have chucked a few quid about. I couldn't name you their team, so
My
they
point
might have
is,
just
right?
had poor recruitment. It happens in football.
My point is, and I appreciate I'm putting you on the spot. My point is that from my perspective, albeit I don't know very much about Wolves Wanderers. They're Wanderers.
Neither do I.
My point is that from my perspective, it's like they've sold their best players for a reasonable amount of money, and rather than spend that money, they've banked it. And one reason I can think of as to why they might bank it is because you've got Mr. Big Fat Premier League knocking on the door saying, "Can I check your accounts to make sure that you haven't lost so much money? Because otherwise, I'm going to start docking you at some point." What do you think of that theory? Tell me if it's a load
Well,
of shit.
possibly, because they'd probably had about 200 million to spend. So for them to have exceeded that, they'd had to chuck a high amount of money at it. And the teams who come up and the teams who are in around that area, like, I mean, how much have Sunderland spent this summer? How much have Burnley spent? It's nowhere near exceeding the fees that they recouped. So, and Wolves have been in the Premier League for a while.
I think there's a rule where the first year or 2 or 3 years, whatever, you're allowed to, have a period of transition from Championship finances to Premier League finances. I think after that period, imagine a team, right? In the 4th year in the Premier League, they've gone through that transition period, and they now have to start balancing the books, and they've got a certain amount of loss they can make, whatever. Forgot where I'm going with that. Completely forgot.
Yeah, but Adam, teams, what you've just said there, teams do that. Teams in the Premier League, that is their model. That is their business model. That is just how they operate. So it can work.
All right, Alex, I've got a new sport for you. It's called fingerball. Alex is fucking great here. Fingerball.
He is.
And I'm going to create a league, right? There's going to be 15 teams in it, yeah. But 3 of the teams got massive fingers, right? Everybody else got little fingers like yours, yeah. Who's going to win that league of fingerball?
Team with the bigger fingers.
It's going to be one of those 3, innit? And it's always going to be one of those 3. No matter what they do, when they put their fingers in that finger bowl and have that fingering battle, it's always going to be those big ones that win. And that's stupid, isn't it? What a crap idea. That is the Premier League.
Right, lads. I think we've covered this long enough. I'm going to...
Let me just... Adam, I appreciate your point, but teams do come up from the Championship and they have success. I know it's not winning the Premier League, but if we look last year, would you have said Crystal Palace's season last year was a success?
No.
Yes.
No. They won the FA Cup. Was Newcastle...
I didn't know that.
Was Newcastle's season a success?
Yes, because they won their first piece of silverware in so many years.
And got in the Champions League.
I appreciate what you're saying. I appreciate what you're saying, that, for a team that haven't won anything for a while, winning any silverware is great. My point is...
Who's going to win the Premier League this year, do you reckon?
It's going to be a runaway with Arsenal, isn't it? But
when did Arsenal last win the league?
Piss off, mate. Arsenal are a big club.
Well, when did they last win the league?
Mate, I don't know.
20 years ago, was it?
21 years ago.
It's going to be such an underdog story when Arsenal win the league, and it's going to be amazing.
Well, it is, considering Liverpool won the league and then spent 500 million. So yeah, probably.
Right, lads. I am going to move you on. There are a couple more football bits I want to cover. I don't know if anybody watched the Liverpool-West Ham game at the weekend. Lucas Paqueta was sent off for dissent towards the referee. He was booked initially for disagreeing with a foul and got himself a booking, and then sort of saw the red mist, carried on towards the referee, giving him some verbals, a couple of teammates trying to pull him away, purposely trying to get himself booked, it looked like. He then came out on Twitter. He then came out on Twitter after the game, and I'm going to read you what he posted. So he posted the video of him being sent off by Sky Sports and then posted, "It's ridiculous to have your life and career affected for 2 years without any psychological support from the Federation. Perhaps this ridiculous behaviour is just a reflection of everything I've had to endure, and it seems to continue enduring. I'm sorry I'm not perfect." So, to come out after a game and throw a statement like that out, when effectively you have been cleared of match fixing to a degree by betting on yourself to be carded, and then getting sent off at the weekend in a way that very much looked like he was trying to get sent off again, I think has raised a few questions around the player. My question to you guys is, do you think that Paqueta is still in deep in this whole gambling situation? Do you think there is a bit more going on in the background that people don't know about? Or do you genuinely just think this is a one-off occasion where he's sort of lost control, and because of what he's gone through recently, he has just kicked out?
Go on, Alex.
Look, if he's going to carry on doing it, I'm going to have to send him off. And then he did it again. So it weren't the best look. And yeah, like I say, you like to think he's just lost his head, but Paqueta's had a bit of history with this, obviously. So, and to come out and throw the FA under the bus a bit as well, I think it was a bit of a cheap jab, but we'll see where they take it from here.
I mean, in my opinion, it's just all very suspicious. Like, you've even got Alisson, obviously Brazilian teammate, wandering the length of the pitch, trying to pull the guy away, trying to keep him calm, and he's still going back. I just cannot see why you would keep going back over and over again if there wasn't something else behind it. I'm going to throw a really random theory out there, but I think he must be in deep with some gambling people, because there is no way you can be cleared and still be throwing out challenges or doing things every week that just look so purposeful to get yourself a card.
I think if there would be one way to deliberately get yourself sent off, it would be the way Paqueta did it at the weekend.
But he was trying. He was trying the whole game. It wasn't like this event happened and he kicked off. He was at the referee the whole game. It was like tackles were being thrown in, and then he wasn't being booked for the tackles. So then he started with his mouth, and like you say, it's just it just looks suspicious.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Here's what I think. Right, last time I can't remember the details of last time, but obviously I know it was something to do with getting carded, I think, and you don't know how many times he's done this, because players get yellow cards in football matches every game, multiple yellow cards a game, right? So in my head, if I was to try and get a yellow card in the game, I think I could do it quite easily and not be suspicious. So when it's 2 times where, I think the first time it must have looked like he was trying to get a yellow card and that's why he started the investigation, whatever. The second time, if that's true that he was trying to get, or he was throwing in big tackles and at the ref all game, and then I think it was late in the game that he got both the yellows as well, right? It's like 80 minutes or something.
70 off, mid-70s, I believe.
Do you know what was even more suspicious?
Without fire. The third thing
Adam.
I just want to say is that reaction afterwards, the kind of, it feels like a little bit of a, distraction tactic where he obviously knows that he's had this betting charge against him. I don't know the details about how it was dropped or why it was dropped, but so I'm not a speculator man. But to then, he obviously knows his history. He knows how that would have looked. To then come out and kind of, it's a bit of a mental health card, isn't it?
Yeah,
psychological effect is having it.
Yeah,
it's a mental health card.
It's a massive cry for help.
Well, is it? Because if it genuinely is, then I feel a bit guilty around that. Not that he's going to listen to this.
No, but the way when I say it's a massive cry for help, in my opinion, it's either a cry of I'm really struggling and I need support from everything I've gone through, or I'm in deep and I'm in the shit and I need some fucking help from somebody. That's the way I see it.
You might not know the answer to this, but I'm going to ask anyway. He's getting paid millions of pounds a year, right? And if he's got himself in a hole with some dodgy geezers, how much of a hole sort of financially is he trying to dig himself out of? Because he's got the resources to, pay people off or pay off debts. So how much money are these guys making off betting on him getting a yellow card? And surely that, the winnings of that can't be more than the net worth of the footballer.
It's probably more of a case, and again, it's all speculation, I'm just going off it here, that he's probably been found out, he's had to stop or he's been banned doing what he's doing, picking up cards or doing certain things in certain minutes a game, meaning that because he's being watched, these dodgy guys can't put their bets on for the cards and things like that then they're losing out on money that they're expecting to get back from whatever agreement is in place to start with. And then it's not always necessarily about the money, is it? It's more the principle of we've agreed something and you're not delivering on it. And then let's be real. These people that, if this is the case, if these people are putting you in this situation to start with, they're not nice guys, are they? There's probably more at stake than just money.
Do you know what looks more? Go on, Adam, you go first.
It's in their interests. It's in everybody's interests to be discreet, isn't it? So, what Paqueta did is bad for the betting companies, for the potential dodgy geezers that are betting on it, because it straight away betting companies have got a reason not to pay out if there's some suspicion, and I imagine that's exactly kind of the policy that they have. So because it's in their interest to be discreet, I can't imagine they're making like millions off of each time he gets a yellow card and they've successfully bet on it, because that would flag somewhere, I would imagine. So that's kind of my point there. If person A,
if somebody had like 500 grand on him to be sent off, that would just raise a flag, wouldn't it, straight away?
Exactly, and that's the point. If somebody's putting 500 grand on that and making Paqueta do that because the person that's got 500 grand needs to win, say if it was 3-1 odds, gets 2 million back, yeah? Paqueta can just say, I don't want to get involved in this nonsense, right? I'm risking my career. This is really bad. It's, I'm going through a lot psychologically here. Here's 2 million. Get off my back. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, I do get it.
Becomes a bit of an easy target then if he pays off, if he kind of agrees to that. But the one thing that made it most sus for me was the fact that it happened when West Ham was probably just about getting back into the game. Do you know what I mean? Like, if the game's gone at 2-0 and his head's fell off a little bit, you can kind of somewhat see it. But, like, it was, like you say, it was only 1-0. They'd kind of just got back into the game a bit. And you were thinking at that point then, now's not the time to, like, be popping at the ref. But obviously, did it once, got told to stop, did it again. So I think, like you say, you compound the games, where the game was, the player, the history he's got. It just all looks a bit iffy, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's not good. Segue in, we'll stay with the Liverpool theme a little bit. I think there are a few managers on the chopping block at the minute. I think Slot was one of them. I think Daniel Farke at Leeds is probably another one. And probably Thomas Frank at Spurs are the three closest now to the chopping block, I would say. I think, based on what happened at the weekend, Slot has maybe brought himself a little bit of time. He's picked up a win against probably a very poor West Ham team, but he made a couple of big decisions in that game. He dropped Salah, which I don't think any other manager's really ever done. And he didn't even bring him onto the pitch, which was quite surprising considering the state of the game at the time. 1-0, still in the 80th minute. You're thinking, do you bring a Salah on to try and seal the game before obviously the Paqueta red? So I think, in my opinion, Slot's probably brought himself a couple more games by making this big decision. Obviously, I know we said in the last week in the podcast, Alex, that in my opinion, that I think Liverpool will excel a bit more once Salah goes to AFCON, which it looks like he's going to go on the 15th, along with the rest of the AFCON players. I think that's been agreed with the Premier League that they'll all go on the 15th now. So I think in that managerial battle, Slot's brought himself a bit of time. I think as Leeds manager, Falk is always going to be under a bit of pressure. Massive club, very loyal fan base. Obviously, really want to be in the Premier League for as long as they can. And then you've obviously got Thomas Frank at Spurs that's just not really getting any results. What are your opinions around managerial sackings? And more importantly, what do you think contributes most towards a sacking towards manager? Is it results purely, or is it style of play? I mean, with Spurs, they're not getting results, but they're not particularly playing well either. So, what do you think is sort of pushing these managers to be so close to the chopping block?
Do you want to go, Adam, or shall I? Or
yeah. I think it depends where you are on the table, right? If you are near the top, then it's more style of play has a bigger influence on kind of potential sackings. I think if you're at the bottom and your style of play isn't great, which obviously it's not going to be if you're near the bottom, and the manager's potentially on the top of the block. But if you still can grind out a few results here and there, no matter what the style of play looks like, I think you're probably more likely to keep your job for a little bit longer. I think it pains me to say this, but I think Slot can't get sacked. Like, you can't win the league in the way that he did, which is, really hurts, but they were pretty dominant, weren't they?
Yeah. Yeah, they were pretty dominant, yeah.
Go from that last season to then having a bad run of form, which undoubtedly they've had, and they've been playing crap, they've been looking crap. I just don't think you can sack the manager. I wouldn't sack the manager that soon. You've built up enough credit, you've won the league. Like, you need more time. Falk and Frank, I don't think I watched Leeds or Spurs play this season, so I don't know anything about their style of play, but what can Leeds expect? Like,
I've been to Ellen Road this year. I think the problem with Leeds is that at the start of the season, even though they weren't necessarily winning away from home, at home they looked competitive. They looked like they could take draws against the bigger teams. I mean, I went against Newcastle and they made Newcastle look pretty ordinary at home. Leeds have that 12th man in the crowd, that the atmosphere is always hostile, so it always gives them a bit of an advantage at home. I think the problem is, though, when you start shipping goals at home to teams in and around you like Leeds have, then questions are going to be asked, and obviously that's what's happened with Falk and the Leeds team.
Yeah, just I'll just come in to both your questions and to Adam's points. I agree with what Adam's saying. If you're a Big Six club, both results and style of football have to go hand in hand. The style of football doesn't necessarily have to be amazing, but there has to be an identity there that wins you football matches, i.e., an Arsenal this year or a Man City or a Liverpool. You need both, really. As it goes lower down the table, it's obviously results-based. Leeds haven't had the results. You'd like to think Ellen Road, as kind of you alluded to there, Dev, is kind of like their joker card, a bit like what Forest is with the City ground. But they've just, like you say, been shipping in goals. And I know they scored a couple at City, but they have struggled to score as well. But I think Frank is under the most pressure. And don't forget, they brought some big names in. They brought Paolini in from Bayern Munich. They brought Colin Mawani in from, was it Frankfurt?
No, PSG.
And Xavi Simons. So a couple of well sought after players in Europe, and the results have been poor and the style of play has been poor. And teams have been going to the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium and winning quite comfortably. So
didn't they start really well, Spurs? Didn't they get off to a bit of a slide?
Yeah, they did. They started the season pretty well under Frank, to be fair, and then it seems to have just fallen away. I think that's probably why the pressure's mounted so much. Going on to your point early.
The other issue with Spurs is the chairman's a bit of a loose cannon. He likes sacking managers.
Well, the chairman's not there anymore.
Yeah,
Is he not?
No, Daniel Levy stepped down, didn't he?
When?
Start of the season.
Yeah, this was a while ago now. So
Why?
You don't know how that could go for Frank. You don't know if this guy could be another Levy where he likes to sack managers or he's going to give time. But I agree with you, Adam, as well. You can't sack Slot. I mean, like you say, they won the league. They brought. I mentioned it last week. They brought in well sought after players. Isak became available. He was arguably top 3 players in the league last year. They win the first 5 or 6 games, and like you don't then just sack a manager when you spend that money. You've gone to that like level of planning.
I think that money is the problem, though. I think that's why Liverpool fans were so upset, because they've gone out and spent this big money on players like Wirtz, who, okay, hasn't hit the ground running, Isak, who didn't really get a pre-season. But those players were brought in, and it doesn't look like they've been brought in to fit a system. It looks like a system has changed for those players. All right, Frimpong and Kirkez haven't really hit the ground running either. So it's hard to sort of say these guys that have been brought in haven't fit the system. But the players that were already in that system look lost, i.e. Salah, Gakpo, the 2 midfielders in Gravenbach and McAllister. It just looks completely lost, and I think Slot has looked really lost in his decision-making. I don't think he's made good decisions up until this week where he's had the bollocks to drop Salah. I think every week he's made decisions. It's the same thing. Liverpool will lose a game for 75 minutes and then they'll chuck Ekitike on, wait another 10 minutes and then chuck Chiesa on for 8 minutes at the end to hope that he can grab a result. I know Liverpool won games at the start of the season, but they looked awful. They shouldn't have won those first 3 games. They were awful.
I think as well, that's probably where you alluded to about AFCON there. That probably comes actually into Liverpool's favour a little bit. Obviously, then they can't play Salah. So the front 3 then becomes, places are up for grabs then, because let's be honest, Salah was playing no matter what. And you don't know how that could be as a squad member where no matter how bad he plays, he's in the team. So how does that affect Wirtz? How does that affect Ekitike, who are... Ekitike obviously start the season brilliantly. And if Wirtz is struggling to get a look in, no matter how bad Salah's playing, you don't know how that potentially affects him. So, like you say, AFCON might be good for Slot because then the front 3 places all kind of become available, kind of become up for grabs.
Yeah. I just want to cut you off a second. It looks like we are missing a banger. Man City were 5-1 up. It is now 5-4 with 12 minutes to play away at Fulham. So that looks like that could be a pretty interesting end to that game. Right,
who'd have thought Fulham competing in the Premier League, Adam?
The eye roll says it all.
You're an idiot.
Right, let's change sport. Let's roll on to something new. The F1.
God, football's boring. Yeah, F1.
The F1. Let's talk about this. 2 weeks ago, McLaren and Lando Norris all but had the championship wrapped up. There was nearly 50-point gap, 3 races remaining. After this weekend's events, we are going into the final race at Abu Dhabi, with a 12-point lead over Max Verstappen, who, as we know, is pretty cutthroat. Oscar Piastri still has an outside chance as well, depending on the results. But this has all come around really by two massive mistakes from McLaren. This week, they opted to not split the strategy behind the safety car, meaning both drivers stayed out and everyone else pitted and got track priority after the safety car had finished. And then the week before, they had the disqualification, meaning both drivers didn't pick up any points. So this is two events essentially that McLaren have caused by trying to keep both drivers in the title fight. My point and my question to you guys is, a team as big as McLaren that have been around the sport for as long as they have shouldn't really be making these mistakes and leaving the door open for a team like Red Bull. We're going to go forward to this weekend, and we all know what happened a few years ago with the Max and Lewis debate. So my question to you guys is, are we expecting Michael Massey and Nicholas Latifi back this weekend to cause a bit of drama so we can have a new series of Drive to Survive?
Mate, the first one, right? The McLaren first disqualification where they both got disqualified. I think that's just one of those things that happens. Like, Formula One cars are designed in a way to absolutely push all the limits. And I think, on any given occasion, did you see how far they were over the?
Yeah, it was minuscule. It was
a width. It was a width of a hair.
I think it was the third of the width of a hair.
Oh, was it?
Which is like, obviously you never try and get that close to the limit. You always leave yourself a bit of headroom. But I think that's just one of those things. And because it's both cars, it's like, it wasn't one was driving it in a particular way. I think they just set up the cars to do the best, and they believed that they set it up in the right way that was going to be fair and not get disqualified. Shit happens, and shit did happen.
Well, there was a bit of rain around, which meant they didn't get any dry weather testing for the first two practice sessions, which obviously the practice sessions are where you learn how to set up a car. So rain the first 2 days meant that they got no dry practice, which obviously the race was a dry race.
Yeah, fair enough. The second one, I don't know. One of the things that McLaren got a lot of praise for this year is having two very good drivers, having a very good car, and just allowing them to race, allowing them both to go at it. They've got loads of praise for it. But I think what they did was just a continuation of that, where they wanted both drivers to have a fair shot and be able to compete against each other. And obviously, with hindsight, we can see that it was to the detriment of the team and it opened the door for Max Verstappen, which obviously, being Max Verstappen, he took that opportunity. But I don't know. I don't want to criticize McLaren for doing something that kind of is something that every other week of the season people have been giving them praise for. This is kind of my position.
I've got two outlooks on this. So Zach Brown came out after the race and basically said, as a team principal, I would rather repeat what happened in 2007, which they did something like this for Alonso and Lewis, and both lost the title to, I can't remember it might have been Vettel or somebody or Schumacher, something like that. And they both lost out. But Zach Brown's comments after the race were, I'd rather have two people who have lived their whole life building towards the dream of being a world champion and not as a person, not turning around to one of them and saying, right, you're going to have to sacrifice your dreams for somebody else's dreams. I understand where he comes from with that. I think the problem with it is, if it was a 2-horse race, it would be a case of go and fight. But it's not. And you have arguably the most ruthless driver on the grid that will take every inch you give him to push it all the way to the end. And now the pressure is all on McLaren. Max can go to that event thinking, all I've got to do is win the race or put myself in a position to win that race. And the pressure's all on them. It's all Lando's to lose. Now, Lando is probably the one that's under the most pressure in all this because, again, Piastri can go to the race and just, it will be what it will be. But I think not giving Lando the opportunity to walk the race, like to pick the most points up in the 2 previous races, might be a bit of a mistake.
So what you're saying they should have done differently?
I think they should have just let Lando win I think they should have built a strategy to allow Lando being in pole position to win the championship.
Was he in pole position?
Well, not pole position on the day, but I mean, like,
okay, so
they should have his pole position in this. Yeah, they should have given him the preferable strategy to keep both drivers out behind a safety car and not, especially when Max is second, Lando's third, and Max has pulled into the pits. The first thing they should have done is just drag Lando straight in. Being in pole position in the championship should have just said, right, we'll match Max, because if we do that, we're guaranteed one of us to win this competition.
Yeah, but you're saying that with hindsight. At that moment in time, nobody knew for sure which one was the best strategy, whether to come in or not. Obviously, as it happened, nearly everybody came in and three cars didn't. But all right then, you could equally say, well, Piastri should have come in and they should have left Lando out. But then that would have been to the detriment of Lando.
Which again, you probably would be right, but like you say, the scenario, the race at the time, Oscar was past the pits and had already caught the safety car up. Lando hadn't. He had the opportunity to go straight in, and it's all right saying like the benefit of hindsight, but everybody knows that at Abu Dhabi you have to have 2 pit stops. It's the rule. It's the same as Monaco. The race is the rule of, I think it's like 2 or 3 races this season, and Qatar this weekend was one of them, that you have to have 2 pit stops. So to leave both drivers out there and not at least match what Red Bull are doing, I think it's a huge, huge mistake.
I feel like...
Can I just say, I was just going to say, I agree with your points, Adam, about the praise for McLaren for basically not having a 1 and a 2, and Dev going on about Zach Brown about denying 2 drivers their dream, and I fully agree. But when you said about 2007 there, don't forget, Hamilton was pretty much, he was going to win that other than an engine failure on the last race, wasn't he? So,
yeah.
Well, McLaren have done brilliantly this year, and in a third of width of the hair, and all of a sudden they've got it in the bag for the final race. So it's hard to really criticise them, but I think I said last week, if there's one driver and one team you really don't want gunning you down on the last day, it's Max Verstappen and Red Bull. So,
I mean,
and like I say, the pomp is on McLaren. It's pretty much a free hit for Verstappen, isn't it? He's been behind all the way. So,
well, let's not forget that Red Bull have all the priority in terms of racetrack as well. They've got essentially 4 cars on track with the sister team. Like
what? What did you just say, Red Bull?
Yeah.
Mate, give over. That is nonsense. That is literally the biggest load of shit. Mate, every single week it's Max Verstappen versus 2 McLarens. They've got Tsunoda, who's like, he'd be 21st if that was possible. And then the other 2 racing bulls, they are not getting involved whatsoever in the strategy and the tactics at the front of the field.
No. Checo, the reason Max won against Lewis a few years ago was because Checo, who was nowhere in that race, managed to hold Lewis up after Lewis's pit stop for a good 5 or 6 laps, which meant Max built enough of a gap to be able to keep. I hear you. All I'm saying is it's that Red Bull are the kind of team that will happily put a driver in the wall if it meant that on the last lap a safety car.
You are an idiot. No, they would. That is
would.
Outrageous.
One of those racing bulls would.
So outrageous.
Mate, it's not. Helmut Marko is a fucking bellend.
Isn't that what happened?
I would not put anything past that bloke.
Isn't that what happened
Mate.
a few years ago, and it was like a massive scandal?
Yeah, because he's a fucking fraud.
I think it was somewhere in the Middle East. I think it was somewhere in that region of the world where he did like a spin or something, and he purposely did it. It brought out a safety car, and it's that French geezer. He orchestrated it.
Grosjean.
Who's only no, it's the French geezer that's like a team principal, but was banned for like 5 years. He's literally recently come back.
Yeah. I know what you mean. I know. I don't remember his name, but I know what you mean.
That was all his idea. But mate, the idea, right? What you're saying is the essence of what you're saying is Red Bull are going to have an advantage, or Verstappen's going to have an advantage because, in theory, there's 4 Red Bulls on the track and only 2 McLarens. But in reality, if you watch every single race this year, it's always Verstappen normally in the top 3, and the 2 McLarens pretty much near him, right? So at any given moment, when something like, the safety car on lap 7 happens at the weekend, that little dynamic that they have at the front, it's always 2v1. And the idea that, somebody 14th and 17th is going to have any impact on kind of that battle at the front is a load of shit, though.
Yeah,
I don't know if I took it the wrong way, Dev, but I think, when you says they've got 4 cars, I interpreted that in terms of like testing and preparation, where Verstappen gets the edge. That's the way I interpreted it.
No, it genuinely was the way that Adam interpreted it, where that team will do, like those people driving for Red Bull will do anything that Helmut Marko tells them, because that's the kind of guy he is. And if you look at it, I don't think Tsunoda has finished or got into Q3 at all this season. Funny enough, the 1 week that McLaren get disqualified, the week after, Tsunoda's like 4th in qualifying, and is all of a sudden in the championship in the race.
What's the point,
mate?
What's your point?
My point is that Red Bull will do anything to win this race, and I wouldn't be surprised if Tsunoda goes straight through the side of Lando into the first corner. That's my point.
Oh my God, that is ridiculous.
Well, they brought the fucking, well, not brought it, but they were handed the championship a few years ago for the exact same thing. So
I'm trying to work out what you said there.
This is a guy, but bearing in mind, let's talk about this. This is Helmut Marko, the guy that owns Red Bull, who has come out after this weekend and publicly criticised an 18-year-old driver to a point where the driver has come off social media for the backlash that he's got for the comments that Marko made for allowing Lando to pass him without trying to put up a fight, when in essence, he made a mistake into a corner and went deep, and Lando took the position. And now Antonelli has literally come off all social media and gone to a social media blackout because the fucking team principal of another team has come out and fucking slated him publicly. Like, they're a fucking scumbag team. I just would not put anything past them.
He's allowed to do that. And the reason why he's come on social media is because of trolls that have jumped on the back of that, which, Helmut Marko might have said some nasty things, but just hurt your words, mate. He's not responsible for all those people.
Team full of fucking scumbags, mate. That's the problem.
He's not responsible for all those people that piled on. Like, he is allowed to have an opinion. And, mate, I'm not being funny. The race engineer at the time said it looked like Antonelli just pulled over. When I watched it at first, I thought, what the hell has just happened now? Like, it's a little bit sus. Obviously, once you think about it a little bit more, he had no reason to do it, and it's probably very likely that he just made a mistake in a corner. But in the heat of the moment, and kind of when you're watching it, and when it's negatively affecting you, it's very, very easy to draw the conclusion that somebody's got a bit of dodginess. No, but anyway, you just mentioned something about Tsunoda and how it's funny that the race after McLaren get disqualified, he's in the top 4 of the sprint. What's your point?
Well, he's been nowhere near, and then all of a sudden he's got a competitive car that's good enough to have an interference in the race.
So the implication of what you just said is for the last 20 races, Red Bull have been tanking that car. So then 2 races before the end of the season, they can then make it good and compete with McLaren. That makes sense.
No, not to that degree. I think it's pretty obvious that Red Bull build a car around Max Verstappen, and every single person that's ever tried to step into the same car hasn't been able to cope with it. I think that's pretty obvious that Max Verstappen is that good of a driver that nobody else can replicate what he's replicating. But there is no way that you were finishing so far behind in qualifying, and then all of a sudden you've got a setup that is competitive. Like it doesn't just happen overnight. It's just not a thing. If that was the case, teams like Ferrari wouldn't be going backwards; they'd be coming forwards.
I've got an alternative theory for you, though. That Red Bull car isn't that good. And the reason why there's so many drivers that have got in the Red Bull car have been crap isn't because all those drivers are crap. It's because the car's crap. The car is the common denominator, right? Max Verstappen is an outlier. He's, in my opinion, the greatest racing driver of all time. And what he is getting out of the car is all on him. And it's nothing to do with the way it's set up for him.
No, I think you're wrong. I think if you go and listen to interviews with people like Liam Lawson, like Pierre Gasly, who, all right, probably are mid-table drivers and will never hit the elite levels. And Albon, like every single one of them has come out and just said that the car is impossible to drive because it is set up purely for how Max's driving style. Now, I agree with you that Max is a generational talent. He's going to be up there eventually with the likes of Lewis, the Ayrton Sennas, the Schumachers. I think he's got a long way to go to be in that conversation, but I think the way he does drive gives him a shout at being one of the best of all time. But there is no way you can come to the conclusion that that car is crap, because it's been the best car for about 5 years up until this season.
So how could it be that Max Verstappen has this like completely unique setup where no other driver on, I don't know how many drivers they've tried, but a lot, no other driver can race the car with the setup that it has, but Max, I'm trying to think this through in my head as I'm talking about it, and it just doesn't make sense.
Yeah, but it has to make sense. It has to make sense because no other team has it ever happened. Every other team that has had the best car or the most effective car, like a Mercedes when they've had Bottas, or like when Sebastian Vettel was at the Red Bull with Mark Webber, like these guys, if Lewis wasn't going to be in pole position or win the race, it was almost guaranteed that Bottas would be the next car. It was always 1-2. There was never a massive gap between them. Again, if Sebastian Vettel didn't win races, Mark Webber won races. If Lewis didn't win races, Nico Rosberg won races. Both cars were always competitive. I think Max is that good that they have purely built a car based on his racing style, which is very aggressive, very pinpoint, and very stylistic, and not very stylistic for anybody's natural driving style. And nobody else can cope with that, and that is purely down to the way that the team want to run. I don't think the Constructors' Championship is a priority for Red Bull. I think the Drivers' Championship... Eh?
But it ain't now.
Well, no. But I think the Drivers' Championship has always been where Red Bull make their money. Let's not forget it's a franchise that's owning them, so it's all about the money for them, the sponsorship and everything that comes in, as opposed to the other teams where it's an integrated car brand at every team pretty much other than Red Bull.
Yeah, that's an interesting angle. I've never considered
I just
them.
want to ask Adam what makes him think Verstappen is the GOAT over Schumacher and Lewis, who both have 7 world titles. Not that I'm thinking it's a bad opinion or anything. I'm just curious to know what your thoughts are, or your reasoning is behind that thought.
I'll give you the answer, Alex. I'll give you his answer. One is a controversial fucker, and he's doing it because he knows a lot of our friendship group are all big Lewis Hamilton fans. So that's opinion number one.
I'm not a big Lewis Hamilton fan by any stretch.
No. But let me tell you why. And it's exactly the same as Luke Littler in the darts. Adam likes potential. He sees these young drivers, young darts players burst onto the scene, make a big impression and pull all eyes to a sport. Now, Adam lied at the start and says he loves all sport. His lies. Adam likes the big moments in sport. Luke Littler provides them. Max Verstappen provides them. For argument's sake, Adam doesn't watch enough sport or long enough in sport to be able to have an opinion on who's the greatest of all time, because he's not watched Lewis Hamilton for his whole career. He's not watched Michael Schumacher for his whole career. He's watched the guy that's burst onto the scene and made an instant impression to him. That's why Adam thinks Max Verstappen is the greatest, because he had one phenomenal season where he's took the championship from the best driver of all time, Lewis Hamilton. And again, like with Luke Littler in the darts, burst on the scene, made a massive impression. Everybody's got a favourite. Adam likes the new guy. That's it.
Yeah, I think you've pretty much hit the nail on the head there, Dev.
Thank you.
There is, to be fair, right, I think part of it is recency bias, where I can't remember Lewis Hamilton winning championships. I obviously can't remember Schumacher winning championships. Like, I just know he won it 7 times or whatever. The thing is, right, I've watched Max Verstappen and I've watched him more than any other driver. Well, I've watched the last 4 or 5 years more than any other year, and he's obviously been at the front and got a lot of the attention. So I've probably watched Max Verstappen more than any other driver. And he is, from somebody that kind of doesn't really appreciate driving styles and kind of tactics and never really raced a car before, he stands out as kind of, somebody that is entertaining in the way that he drives, because it's so aggressive and he makes things happen where, it doesn't look like any other driver could or does. But then the other things that, right, realistically, there's like, 3 or 4 names that are going to be the GOAT, yeah? Verstappen, Hamilton, Schumacher, Senna. I've got reasons why I think Hamilton isn't the GOAT. Schumacher, I don't, but like, 20 years ago. I don't really care what happened 20 years ago. And then Senna's a bit of an outlier because it's, the whole kind of emotional,
Never got to prove
way that he drive,
yeah.
and he didn't get to sort of fulfill his potential. So I think anyone that kind of wants to highlight Senna and they can argue for him, it's quite hard to back that away. But one of the biggest reasons is because I like Finding Devon.
And you know what? I respect that you just own that. So there we go.
Right. Last topic then before we start wrapping it up, boys. The cricket, the Ashes, the second test. It's now the second when we're recording this. Starts in 2 days' time. We have seen that Crawley has kept his place. Mark Wood, unfortunately, again, is injured and has been replaced by Will Jack, so that is the only change to the England lineup. The Aussies have announced a 14-man squad. No Cummings, no Hazelwood again, so advantage possibly still England. Well, it was supposedly advantage England leading up to the first test with these teams. It looks very likely that Khawaja's going to miss out as well, meaning they will probably change the batting lineup. I think we could probably see Head opening the batting again and maybe English coming in for to fill that number 5 role with Head moving up the order. What do we think's going to happen, and what do we think the key points are going to be going into this test match for either team to pick up the win?
Well, for start, is that confirmed about Khawaja? Because I, in my mind, I think he will play.
No, Khawaja's out.
Oh, is he out with the back
He's
spasm?
out.
Yeah, out with the back. Oh, okay.
Yeah. So Khawaja is out.
It would be interesting if they actually did move Head to permanent open, because then you're having to chop your opener and chop your middle order, where I think there was potentially talk of them maybe just sticking like Carey up there and then just making one change, because Carey and Head kind of have similar styles in terms of like the counter-attacking. They go hard at the ball, so you could maybe stick Carey at the top and then like keep the middle order the same. And then obviously Jack's coming in for England. I mean, Wood didn't do too much in the first test anyway, so Jack's coming in, bolsters the batting as well, which we need. Fucking hell.
After the first test.
But yeah, the start does damage in that pink ball as well, so I think he's going to be the one to look out for again. And yeah, it's just the volatility of Bazball. You don't know what you're going to get. I don't think anybody will be surprised if we wake up and either England are all out, or the 300 for 2, or they've bowled Australia out, or Australia 200 for 1 or whatever. So
300 for 2 with Zach Crawley getting his first 100 of the season. Yeah.
Look, I would love Zach Crawley to put everybody to shame and prove everybody wrong and get runs. Can you put your hand on your heart now and genuinely believe, Devon, Zach Crawley will get runs this test?
Zach Crawley will score 100 this test. Hand on heart, telling you now. I think
somebody get that clipped up and get it posted on the Wednesday.
I think the pink ball will suit Zach Crawley. I think he will go into this test a little wiser. I think he'll realise now that the nerves and the build up to the first test has gone. I think he'll probably play Stark a little bit like he played Bumrah. I don't think he'll be so aggressive.
Why do you think he's going to get wiser? Because he's 27. He's played 60 tests now. What we see with Crawley is what we're going to get. He's going to play a couple of innings where he looks like fucking Brian Lara and he's caressing it everywhere and he's playing with his cock. And he's making it look easy. And when Crawley's in full flow, it looks easy. But then the other times, you're playing with 10. You really are. So I don't necessarily believe he will learn his lesson. I just think he's waiting to have his day. And let's hope he has a couple.
I saw enough in the India series to realise that Zach Crawley can do what England fans want Zach Crawley to do. I think the whole build-up, the whole emphasis on we're going to play cricket in this style of cricket, and he's going to be the first person to deliver that into the first test, probably had an effect on him. I genuinely think that the way the pink ball moves and then the way that it dies as soon as it gets to 20 overs old and it starts softening up before the reverse swing starts coming later on in the evening, I think he'll probably bat a little bit like he did against Bumrah. I've just got this feeling that he's going to just knuckle down, still play the shot if it's there to play, but I think he will just take his time, wait for that pink ball to soften up, and then counter-attack. And I honestly, hand on heart, and I know we've argued in the group chat today about Crawley, but I honestly think he's going to be the key point for this second test.
Can't see him lasting 20 overs. I really can't.
Again,
but also, I don't necessarily think you should drop him. Look, obviously, like we spoke about, England have spent the best part of 2 years now planning for this series. You don't just then change all your plans and your strategy over the test we've just lost. I know we lost by 8 wickets, but England, for large parts of that test, did get ahead of the game. So there are moments where hopefully England can capitalise and be better on in this test. But
my
with that
problem
Crawley being at the helm of it, I'm not sure.
My problem with this whole Zach Crawley is the problem, needs to be changed thing that is going around is that everybody that has said it, not a single person has come up with a solution that would be warranted. At best, you're guessing. Gossie said it earlier. Why do you not chuck Jacks at the top of the order? Why do we not throw so-and-so at the top of the order? Well, because you're guessing. You're going to guess the exact same results from them as you are from Zach Crawley, because Crawley has proved that at times he can get these monster scores. Yet the top 4 openers in the county championships last year have all had chances with England and fucked them up. So at best, you're guessing. So like you were saying, if you've built 3, 4, 5 years to lead into this series and expect it to change after one, it's just not going to happen. And I think people need to just realise that, stop getting on his fucking dick, and just, it is what it is. And I think he's got absolutely no pressure because he knows he's not going to get dropped.
But I think that's the point. I think that's where we see a slight difference is that's wrong. Players like Duckett, Brooks, Stokes, Smith, they've built enough credit to last the 5 tests regardless what they do. I don't think Crawley has that. I don't think Crawley has built that bank. I mean, he's averaging 30 over 60 tests. He got a big 250 in the COVID. So then if you're talking from the last 2 seasons, he can't be averaging more than 25. This is kind of what I was saying. If that's the performance you're getting out of him, you may as well just chuck anybody up there. If he's undroppable, if you're saying whatever Crawley does, we're not dropping him, well then anyone could just play it. You may as well just chuck Stokes to the top of the order if it's just going to be a free hit.
Put Devon then.
Yeah.
What's that? Top of the order. I said put Dev up top of the order. Dev Brocklehurst.
Yeah.
Well, he might have nicked one for 4, and that's more than Crawley did in the last test. So
no, fair enough. Right, we're going to end it there, boys. Next week's episode is going to be a special. We are going to look ahead to the World Dart Championships. I know a lot of people.
Who's going to win?
Go on, tell me who's going to win.
Luke the Nuke.
Could have guessed. But no, we're gonna look into the World Dart Championships a little bit more. We're gonna look at each side of the draw, talk the big talking points that are building into the week, the rules, the way that it works, and a massive Christmas that everyone loves. Well, the rules changed this year. All seeded players got a bye last year, but in previous years. This year, everyone is in from round 1.
Makes sense.
And there are more players as well.
Players.
So, yeah.
You have more players by doing that, so that makes sense.
Yeah. So, it's made a big change. It means that seeds play a massive part in it now, meaning that both Lukes are in opposite side of the draws. So we'll be going through each quarter of the draw in person, seeing probably who's the favourite from each quarter to make the final. And we'll just go into it a little more in depth. We might cover some of the other stories from other sports at the weekend a little bit, but the darts will be the big one next weekend. So
I think if Adam comes back on next week, it's only right we get a bit of NFL chatting, and I'll do my research.
Well,
you boys.
Well, we're getting close to the playoffs, so the NFL is going to become a little bit more.
Dev, do you know anything about the NFL? Because I was thinking this when you said it. I like the NFL, but if you start asking me about teams that aren't the Dallas Cowboys, I really know fuck all.
The history of the NFL, not so much. However, I watch pretty much every game now on a weekend. 6 o'clock comes, I turn the football off, and the NFL goes on, and that is where I stay till. That's where I stay till about 12 o'clock at night. So yeah, I know a lot. I've been keeping an eye on it. I know a lot of the situations and the scenarios. So yeah, we'll be able to discuss that a bit more when the playoffs come around.
To be fair, very quickly, I saw a tweet earlier today that said this geezer, whoever it was, arguing that any of, I like a list of 20 teams can win the Super Bowl this year.
It is wide open.
Yeah, well,
Like-
I think the Texans were on there. And I thought piss off, but like I'd say 15 out of 20 were legit.
Well, all you got to do is look at the league, and all the big names that you would expect to be at the top of the divisions are all looking likely to miss out on the playoffs. I mean, the Chiefs are in dire straits. At the start of the season, they were looking odds
they
on
had
for
a really
the three-peat.
tough game though, didn't they?
Yeah, against the Cowboys. Yeah,
They played the Super Bowl 2026 champions.
so
That's what you can expect.
right, boys, it's been a pleasure.
It's Cocoa Pop Sunny, so let's go.
Yeah, been a pleasure, boys. Thank you again for joining us. Don't forget, drop a like, drop a comment, subscribe so you don't miss an episode. And we've got plenty more coming up in the future weeks. So we'll see you around.
All right.
Cheers, Devon. Cheers, Adam.
Bye.